Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the TopCyberPro podcast, season five. Season five. We're already halfway through season five. What an amazing run! Every season keeps getting better and better and better, and this episode is going to be no exception because we have Deral Heiland on. Deral Heiland is a principal security researcher particularly focused on the Internet of Things, but you can see that even in the background of his office there, there's a lot of things in the background. We're going to get to all of that because so much of that looks so interesting in the back. But Daryl, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
So Daryl, tell us a little bit about what does a principal security researcher do?
Okay. Yeah. I've been a Rapid 7 for almost 12 years now. So I've been doing I came on as a pen tester and then got promoted over to research for IoT technology. So it was kind of an interesting start. I was on the pen test team. They came to me and like, hey, we're spinning up this research role in services. Are you interested? It's on IoT technology. And I'm like, well, let me think about it. I didn't know what IoT stood for.
Mhm.
So I kind of played them off, went and looked it up. I'm like, oh, Internet of Things, embedded tech. I'm like, that sounds cool. So let's go ahead and do that. So then I sat down. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? They're like, we want you to hack IoT, write blogs, speak to the media, do talks, publish CVs. I'm like,
Wow.
I like that. That's cool. I can do that. Now, obviously, it's morphed over the years. If you know anything about IoT, consumer grade IoT was kind of like easy entry point. Cost is cheap. You can buy the devices, do whatever evil you want to do to them, find vulnerability, get CVs. I think one year I had like some crazy, like 28 CVs one year. So that quickly got boring. I'm like, gosh, just it's like throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. This isn't fun anymore. So I started changing it up and try to build an interesting, more focus around that. I've looked at medical and enterprise tech, and even did a partnership with Domino's Pizza to take a look at how you
Okay.
implement a large scale IoT solution. Just all this stuff that I thought brought, and it wasn't like CV driven. So I wasn't after CVs. I was after knowledge, building a knowledge we can share within Rapid 7, knowledge we can share with our customers. And also in this process, I help build out the IoT pen test offering that they do in services. So I helped build that, did a bunch of those. So I did some of that. I think I was like 25% billable early on that. So I kept billing and keep in doing that type of stuff. And then just building knowledge base. The ultimate goal was build that knowledge base on what IoT is, how do we approach it, what do we look at from a security standpoint, what do we need to think about from a vulnerability risk factor within our organizations and businesses. And then a lot of it was around how do we test it as we see these emerging technologies and new changes taking place. How do we build new testing methodologies around that?
Okay. So you mentioned an
So I do.
acronym there, and for those that are not really plugged into IoT, you mentioned the term CV, right? Could you break that out for us and explain really what that is?
Well, a CVE is common vulnerability exposure. So it's basically when a vulnerability is found on this, you file a CV and it gets registered in the system and it's assigned a number. So
Mhm.
you are able to document all the new vulnerabilities out there. And with that, it makes it easy. So you can actually just reference the actual CV number and everyone should be able to quickly look it up, find data on it. Often when you start looking at vulnerability programs, vulnerability scanners, things like that, and when they find these things, they also reference it. So you have all of this cross-reference capability that identifies details about specific vulnerabilities that are found.
Yes. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the CVE, the system, was brought to us by MITRE, if I'm correct on that.
Yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah.
one of the many things that MITRE has given to industry. So shout out to MITRE. I've had a lot of folks from MITRE on the podcast, so shout out to you guys doing the great work you do. So obviously you mentioned like one year was like 20 something CVs you wrote, and it gets to a point to where it's like, okay, you're not feeling fulfilled in this, so you took yourself in a different direction, and like you said, you started looking at other industries. what has been the one industry where because IoT is everywhere, right? It's in our
Yeah.
cars. It's even in air fryers, because anything is Wi-Fi, Bluetooth enabled these days, and so that means
Yeah.
it's got some kind of programmable chip in it. But with that being said, what industry would you say was like really interesting, intriguing to you, and what do you feel is maybe the most dangerous industry that has these IoT devices?
Wow. So I've not looked in automobile. I haven't dug into the automobile. I actually have a telemetry unit sitting underneath my desk here somewhere out of a vehicle. It was on my schedule list of things to look at, but I
To
haven't
look
got
at.
around to it.
Hmm.
But the areas that intrigue me a lot, or the two general enterprise, the enterprise environment, that work environment. We did a study a number of years ago. I had a marketing researcher assigned to me when I first started in this role. We started thinking about IoT and what does that mean to the industry, everybody.
Hmm.
And that study ran for about 6 months. And in the conclusion, we determined that somewhere around 2019, 2020, that the number of IoT devices on an enterprise network would outstrip the number of standard devices,
Hmm.
laptops, desktops,
Yep.
router switches, all that. You would start seeing more IoT things, office systems, office management systems, the TVs, the list goes on and on and on of those devices. That intrigues me a lot because I still don't think we've really got a grasp of what the potential security impact of that could eventually be.
Hmm.
The other area that probably scares me the most is the medical world, the
Yes.
medical stuff. And I did a research project on that where we looked at infusion pumps. I think where is it? So there's a whole stack of
Oh,
infusion pumps
look at
right
that.
there. I get it
Yeah.
right here. Yeah, right there. So a stack of infusion pumps. So we looked at infusion pumps as an example, and the most frightening part of that was we did this. We ended up narrowing the three devices down mainly to Baxter's, and then we found like four vulnerabilities. And we worked closely with Baxter, amazing organization, well organized, great to work with to solve security problems. We actually even spoke with them at the CyberMed conference in San Diego on the concept of ethical disclosure of vulnerabilities in the medical world, which went really well. But during this whole exercise, we found out a problem that a number in the industry knew about, but we kind of better documented it. And that is the failure on deacquisition of technology. So I ended up purchasing infusion pumps, about 12 infusion pumps or parts of infusion pumps. But we had 12 different samples. I think out of those, I had nine of them still had the Wi-Fi pre-shared key data to gain access to the critical care network systems for a number of hospitals. It was actually five different major hospital chains we actually had the Wi-Fi pre-shared keys for. And we published a paper on that talking about that whole, it was a very technical paper because I'm a technical driven person. So it's in the beginning of it, we talk about the risks, the threats, and in the end, we talk about, cradle to grave processes, procedures, and stuff like that.
Great.
And then in the middle, I literally tore the pumps apart and identified every possible way to get the data off these things. Everything from serial plugs to pulling chips to a JTAG, the whole nine yards for every one of the pumps available. And then we documented all of it, showing how easy and how many different ways there are to get data off these devices, and then talk about how critical this data was and how impactful it is from a security standpoint that we need to solve this problem and kind of move to that cradle to grave.
Mhm. Yep.
And you hear me talking about this all the time. The whole idea, forget about forget about implementing something in your network. Put an entire policy and process and procedure in place that should cover the acquisition process, the deployment process, the ongoing maintenance and support process, and then the deacquisition process. Have all of those in place ready to go before one device is even put on your network. That way, at the end of life of technology, when you're sitting there with 10,000 infusion pumps on a pallet going, well, what the hell do we do with these now? Because at that point, you're probably just going to make a bad decision that could impact your overall organization security.
Wow.
But if you plan that stuff ahead, you can prevent that altogether.
So I love that term. It's the first time I'm actually hearing the term deacquisition. So that's a new one for me, and I love it. And then, it matches up to the end of life of a system, right? You're supposed to
Yeah,
have a procedure for taking that system to where it's back to a secure state, such as like in the defense federal world, if you decommission, like say, a secret workstation, that drive has to be physically destroyed, right? Or degaussed. There's certain
right.
measures that you take to render that device inert or inoperable is a better word I will use. But I love that term deacquisition, and so like the fact that again people just kind of toss it, and then other people, third party or aftermarket sales, or picking up at a junkyard, if you will, just get these products in. Like you said, they got all this pre-shared key, and they got all this information on it. You mentioned about taking these things apart and showing the numerous ways to get the data off these devices. So I have to ask, when you was a young man, was you the kind of person like I was this kind of person as well as a lot of us at Tech, where we take apart the toasters, the radio, and see if we put it back together? Was that something that you did as a young man?
To some extent, things when I was young, things weren't quite as interesting as they are now. So
Hmm.
you know how that is. But yeah, I did that. I did that. I think when I was a child, um, I ended up having one of those electronic kits, those 150 electronic kit things you
Hmm.
had. And I was that guy or that child that I didn't just build the kits, I would like modify them. I remember I built a jammer one time on the device where I could broadband jam all the RF signals. It made my dad furious because I'd trigger it, nothing worked. Radios didn't work, TV didn't work, everything went totally white noise. And he used to get angry at me when I'd set that off, and it would do it for probably 50 yards from around the house. So
Uh, so going back to the IoTs and the research you do, what would be a surprising thing that the average person isn't aware of when it comes to IoT devices, like in our everyday lives?
I think, gosh, in your everyday lives, I think everyone understands the concept of a hard drive.
Yeah.
You know, we have a hard drive on our computer, and it contains data. And when you go to get rid of that computer, you got to make sure that data is gone. We get that. People don't understand that your data is being stored in a small chip. And it can be a lot of data. Some of these devices can be 2, 4, even 8 gigabytes of data actually stored on some of these devices.
Mhm.
And it's simple. I just earlier today I did a briefing with University of Nevada, Reno class on journalism on my IoT research, and one of my slides on there showed a light bulb. And you buy these smart light bulbs, you integrate them into your environment so you can walk in and go, "Hey, Alexa, turn my lights on," and do cool things like that. And when those light bulbs go out, quit working, you think, "Oh, it's dead." You pick it up and you throw it in the trash. I can guarantee you 99% of the time, the only thing dead on there is the LEDs.
Mm,
Now you just thrown in the trash your data. It can contain passwords. It can contain Wi-Fi pre-shared key data, and you can easily pull it off there. And most people look at these because when I used to travel, I used to carry a light bulb, smart bulb, and then I'd carry a small bulb with a cover off of it, and it just looks like a circuit board, just a circuit board, with a Bluetooth chip or a Wi-Fi chip or something like that on there. And PSA used to grab me all the time because it'd freak him out. Why is this guy carrying light bulbs around in his backpack? Um, but I use it as in show and tell. So I'd sit down with the reporter and I'm like, "Light bulb, familiar with it? Yeah, smart bulb, right? Do you really know what you're looking at? This is not your parents' or your grandparents' light bulb." And I'd pull that out. It's a computer. It is a computer in there that contains data that represents your network in some fashion or you in some fashion. Do you want to just throw this away? Impactfully, it may not be a problem. I can throw it away. What's the odds of someone getting it? Pretty slim. But if you're somebody who's important, you're a politician, you're a rock star, you're a movie star, somebody of high profile, and you're throwing stuff like that in the trash, that's a bad thing
yeah.
because you could possibly be a target.
Wow.
And you're just giving your data away to be targeted. So,
So there's been so many reports in the past 5+ years talking about every year how the increase in IoT devices in our networks and across the world is just exploding. The last number I saw, I think we were supposed to hit like 1 point something trillion plus devices this year. It's astounding the number of devices that are just more and more coming on every day, right? What do you see as a future concern, or what are some concerns today that people should like? If you're a security manager, you're a security professional, what is some things that you should be aware of that you need to be, if you don't already know about, you need to watch some videos or read some papers by yourself. But what is some concerns that you would advise any security professional to get in the know of and to be at least aware of as we increase these number of devices year by year?
Yeah, I think in general, the increase in these devices is just being ignored. So organizations are basically increasing their footprint
Hmm.
in their environments, and they don't have or don't think of a way to actually monitor that. Any technology that communicates is potentially an entry point of some fashion into
Yes.
your organization. And if you don't know what you have, you're not tracking it. I can guarantee if that's the case, you're probably not patching it. Now, some devices will automatically upgrade, but in general, a lot of them don't, especially enterprise level devices. And you're letting most of your organizations or entities within your organization acquire these technologies because a lot of times they're great business enablement and you want to leverage that. If it can make you do business better, by all means, you need to be leveraging it, but you need to be leveraging it smartly. You need to know you have these tech. You need to know how they work, how they integrate into your environment, um, and what somebody could potentially do. I always encourage people kind of brainstorm, do that risk analysis on these devices and think about or threat analysis. How could somebody use this tech on your network?
Hmm.
Abuse it. Um, which is something, as somebody who worked as a pen tester for like 10 years before doing this, my brain goes there on everything. It's like, okay, you have a device and its purpose is A, B, or C. What if somebody can do D, E, and F with it? Can it have those capabilities? And you'd be surprised the number of devices. I built a large portion of my career in pen testing career off making devices do things for me they were never intended to do. Um, so I mean, examples, and we're gonna readdress some of this stuff soon here in a paper that's coming out. But multifunction printers. Years ago, I did a bunch of stuff in multifunction printers. I wrote a paper on what's known as a passback attack. It's the concept of altering configurations on a printer with default creds that's been
Hmm.
integrated in your business environment and have it pass back after directory creds to you. This vulnerability is still alive and well. It still
Hmm.
works on a large
One
number,
of the
a
major
large,
pivot attacks vectors, if
yeah,
you will. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. A large number of these printers are still vulnerable to this. This last year, we ended up reaching out to a number of them to try to get these things fixed. Konica, Xerox on some of their devices. I'd finally got around to being nice about it. Years ago, I wasn't quite as nice, and we just published the stuff. But now we're kind of like probing the vendors, going, "Hey, this problem still exists in this new model. You need to consider fixing it to reduce these risks and take this away." But again, it's okay. We're taking something that the device uses to carry out a needed function,
Hmm.
and then we're altering it to do something it was never intended to do. And you can also do that for just pivoting through devices. I was talking earlier today on a system that had basically a font setting. So you can say, hey, it needs new fonts. Okay. And this product or whatever can be exposed facing the internet or facing anywhere. It needs new fonts. And you can go to that interface and go, okay, go ahead and retrieve the fonts from this, and it'll prompt you to log on. So it's Active Directory. So I log on Active Directory somewhere, retrieve the font. You've seen a number of applications that allow you to do that type of
Hmm.
functionality. Have you ever considered the fact that this thing is actually carrying out an authentication? So if I can do a font check and it allows me to do that unauthenticated. But the back end allows me to attempt to authenticate all at once. I have a device I can actually turn into an Active Directory brute force attack tool and have
Hmm.
it do all the brute force attacks for me. That's a primary example of a normal functionality in your environment
Hmm.
that could easily be abused to do something
Yes,
that you
because
didn't intend
usually
it to
these
do.
devices, unlike user accounts, don't have clipping levels, and so very good vulnerability you're exposing there with that. Um, a lot of bigger companies that have been leveraging IoT, like the first adopters, when we think of like petrochemical industries and other manufacturing type facilities where they used to have the operational technology, the OT networks, where they have all the sensors and these devices, and then they had their traditional IT networks. So one of the big concerns lately has been that convergence, because obviously you have engineers that sit in their offices or working from home that connect into the IT environment that want to be able to pull the data and the sensors and stuff from the OT. So, from your perspective, how has IoT played out with this convergence of like OT and IT networks and that convergence? Has that caused, from what you've seen, some concerns and issues in the past few years?
I think it has. I think it's moved a lot of companies away from the air gapping that you've seen on most of their SCADA environments in the past. The ability to share data is important, and we know
Mhm.
that. But and I worked for a Fortune 500 company a number of years ago, where we were at that point. We had air gap process control networks, and they wanted access to it from the normal networks. Um, and in those cases, there, I'm like, okay, I was part of a team where we had to design that, and I built a model for doing that. It was basically a ring model. So basically, the we designed in our case that the SCADA network would actually treat the corporate network like the corporate network treats the internet, and we DMZ'd everything in
Okay,
each
yeah.
places. So if they needed access to data, their data historians could exist in the DMZ, because data historians was just data. They could query the data, they could process the data, but yet they weren't impacting process control. If they need to impact process control, they would literally VPN in from the corporate network into the DMZ with two-factor authentication,
Mhm.
and then they can control a system there. They never controlled a system directly on the process
Mhm.
control, but only in the DMC, the management console, and then they could actually do it that way.
And
And
then,
that way we created that type of environment. Now, our organization's doing that. I couldn't answer that. I would expect, with all the heightened security problems going on out there, and malware and ransomware and stuff like that, that they're probably rethinking what they're doing, and they're trying to solve those actual problems. I know there's a lot of niche companies, security companies out there that produce, because you can't do vulnerability scanning on process control network. Scanning just not a safe thing to do.
yes.
But there's companies out there I know. Skate Defense is one of them. Rapid7 partners with them,
Mhm.
and I know there's probably several others that do that, that have the ability to monitor those networks in a passive fashion for vulnerabilities, behavior analytics, and the list goes on and on and on. But again, the air gapping, we have to maintain either some kind of air gapping or some kind of model, like I mentioned, where the two will never touch each other directly. And that way it can have some level of security.
Mhm.
Is there a perfect answer? Is there a perfect answer? I think if I knew that perfect answer, we'd be all filthy rich.
It'll be
So,
filthy rich.
uh,
Another concern that a lot of professionals have, and again, feel free to either say debunk it, that is not really how that works. But a lot of security professionals fear that if we do have that interconnection of the OT and IT, or have the Internet of Things devices touching our IT networks, that we have the potential for like, and this is just from colleagues and professionals of mine. They use the terms of zombie attacks, the equivalent of a botnet attack, where these devices can get hijacked and then attack the network, or cause like denials, internal denial services, or flood attacks and things of the nature. How probable or likely is that?
actually compromising the skate environment, because security on SCADA systems, in my opinion, is pretty low, and it needs to be because you don't need to be worrying about logging in when you're dealing with critical systems that could cause harm and damage if you can't get logged in a critical situation. So often the security on those is laxed. Would something like that be attacked to go back the other way? Um, to me, it seems unreasonable. I'm never going to say not. The ability I think the big thing is not necessarily breach, but the ability, the big thing now is ransomware, malware ransomware. Could a breach in a SCADA, if the SCADA environment was the only entry point, God forbid you've created an environment like that, but if it was, would I see them possibly planting ransomware in that environment or even trying to pivot into the core network to breach or carry out ransomware? Yeah, if that's your entry point. Typically, SCADA environments are several notches down in the network environment, and I would find them difficult to believe that they would be the entry point, other than in cases where you're dealing with Wi-Fi services and things like that that could be compromised. Um,
Got it.
an example: you sell all your old Wi-Fi access points on the internet, and somebody buys them, and you're smart enough to leave the asset tag still on them so they know where they came from, or the SSID, which you can use Wiggle to go out and find out where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
Then those areas may be compromised as the initial entry point. But again, somebody would have to maintain some level of physical proximity to do that. So they're not going to do it from Russia or China or Europe or wherever else. They have to be physically within reasonable range to typically carry that out, I would think.
So I have to ask you, and I've been looking at all these different devices and things in the background. So could you just step us through some of this equipment and tech that you have right here behind you? There's so much here to start with, but yeah, you already panned over, showed us the medical stuff, but I see that
Oh,
look like a microscope
so I have a
and
microscope. It's a 45 power binocular microscope. I use that a lot. That comes in handy for working on
any
really, really small.
ICs.
Really, I'll show you. I'll show you real quick.
Okay.
I'll give you a quick visual of the type of work I would do under that. Give me a second. Let me find this photo booth. Let me get this over here. That's it. And then I'll share my screen up. General easy. Okay, here's a gosh. Oh, come on. Yeah, Daryl. Zoom. Okay, let me share my screen real quick. Um, and I will send a request to you. Share.
Mhm.
It's not turned on, so you have
All
to
right,
turn it
here we
on to
go.
share.
You
Uh,
can share now.
okay, multiple photos can be shared. Share. Um, let's just share photo booth. Let's see how that works. Share.
Here we
Can you see
go.
photo? You see photo booth. You see a big penny there, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so typically some of the stuff I do is a process known as dead bugging. This is that chip where we don't have a socket for it to give you an idea of dead bugging. So this is 16 wires, 17 wires
hmm
soldered to these pads. This is done under a microscope, so you can
Yep.
see how big my finger is.
Yep.
Um, this type of work, I hardly can see these with my bare eye.
Yeah.
So under a microscope, this gives us the ability to do this microscopic or small work. These are 40 gauge wires, and they're all attached to each one of these pads. And then the end of the wires are actually connected to a chip reader, and it gives us the ability to read data off that. This happens to be a what's known as a multi-chip package that
hmm
was pulled out of a cellular device.
hmm
So a small
I
cellular
mean, I was about to
device.
say that's about the size of a SIM card.
Yeah, this is about the size of a small SIM card. Yeah.
hmm
And we managed to
So
hook
tiny.
17 wires to it. And each one of those pads are like a quarter millimeter. So that's kind of what I would do under something like that.
hmm
Really small microscopic type soldering work.
Okay.
Um, so
And of course, it
that would
looks
be
like you
one
have a
thing.
soldering gun right there on the
Yeah,
desk.
the soldering irons. So we have two. I have two solder irons I have in here. This is a micro iron,
Yep, a
and
micro.
the tips on this are I have two of them, a point 0.1 and point 0.2 millimeter.
Mm-hmm.
So fractional, and then a standard size soldering iron. This is a nice Weller unit that I use. So those are the two things I use the most. And of course, we have, the typical logic analyzers and stuff like that, like the Sele logic
Mm-hmm.
analyzers and things
Mm-hmm.
that we actually have. A lot of that type of stuff. And then um, infrared reflow oven up here.
Okay.
Down here is a hot air reflow.
Uh-huh.
And of course, this over here is a radio from 1920.
Okay. Is that just for the cool factor, or is it something
Yeah,
you
it's that,
use?
that's no, that ain't nothing. That's the cool factor.
Okay.
So I'm a history buff.
Uh-huh.
So I get into the whole so I get into the whole history thing. So I
Uh-huh.
like old things, the antique
Mm-hmm.
things, things like that. This here's a memory chip. This is
Yeah.
actually 8K, but it's 1 bit.
8 kilobits.
It's 8K 1 bit.
One
Is
bit.
this is
Oh, 8K.
1970
Period.
8K. It's just 1 bit, so you need seven more of these to
Wow.
to make a full 8K. Uh, and this is hand wired iron core. So
Yeah.
if you put these under a microscope, every one of these cross wires will have a little donut on it
Uh-huh.
that is like microscopic.
Wow, the oldest thing I got, I was about to show off, but you got everybody in the world trumped with that. This is the oldest thing I got right here. But you've got me so trumped with that. That is so cool. So,
Yeah. So this is only part of it. This is the memory part. I cut this off. The actual board was this big,
yeah.
was that big. It had one of these, and you had eight of these, and that
Mhm.
gave us 8K of memory.
Yeah. I mean, again, at one time, and that was, again, the after effects of the rooms with the big vacuum tubes and machines gradually got
Yep.
smaller mainframes and so forth. So,
Yep. And this predated me. I didn't,
yeah,
luckily, I
yeah.
did not have to work in this world of
Yeah, thank
things.
goodness, right?
Not that I didn't work on things that were like just barely one notch above that a few times, but
It's
um,
amazing when you think about the time of that tech, right? Back like Apollo 13, right? When they were trying to figure out how to like rescue the guys in Apollo 13 and they were like figuring things out. Or as the saying went, we sent someone to the moon with a slide ruler and a calculator or something like that. It was,
yeah, I worked in the newspaper industry and as an engineering tech doing electrical
uh-oh, did we lose you?
industry.
Oh, there
We
you
had in the publishing industry, we had some older stuff. One of the computer systems we had, it had these drives. They were called Hawk drives. They were 10 megabyte disk drives, um, hard drives.
go.
It took two people to carry it.
Yeah,
It
about
was
the
10
size of a
meg.
piece a suitcase. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it was 3 feet by 2 feet and about that thick. Weighed about 60, 70 pounds. It took two guys to carry it. I remember working on those things because those things would go bad sometimes. And, on the modern hard drives, you've heard of a head crash,
Hmm.
like the heads would crash. When the heads would crash on these things, oh, it was horrible, the most horrible noise you can imagine. The heads would crash, bend up underneath, and it would start peeling off layers of aluminum from the disc and making this screeching noise and smoking. The whole room would fill with smoke.
Wow. A literal crash, right?
Big
So,
little.
so what I like to do now, Daryl, I like to segue into my favorite question that I have for all my guests, and I love this question because sometimes it's an amazing story, and sometimes it's just it happens for some people. But the question is this: if we could go back to your day one, the day that you decided you wanted to go into tech, IT, cyber, all of this career that you're the path that you've now done so much work in, what was that day one story? And can you share that with us?
Oh gosh. So I used to be a welder. I was trained welder coming out of high school. Don't have a college degree. I was a welder, and turns out I got laid off. Didn't have a job. I ended up getting my car repossessed, and all that stuff. And it was like, okay, have to make a decision in life. Early 20s, went down, joined the Navy. So not just join the Navy. Let's ramp it up a notch. I joined in advanced electronic track as a sonar technician and served on board a ballistic missile submarine.
Nice.
So that's how I moved from being a welder to get into electronics and stuff like that. Um, so that's kind of that was that one step. Um, and that story is way worse than it sounds because I was current wife. We've been married over 40 years.
Congratulations.
That day we were dating. We were still dating. We were engaged, but we were dating. I joined the Navy and didn't tell her.
And
Did
you
not
live to
tell her.
tell the tale.
I showed up for dinner at her parents' house that night, sitting down. Her dad goes, "So, Daryl, what did you do today?" I leaned back and said, "I joined the Navy," went back to eating. It got a little noisy right after that, but the thing was is I don't have a job. Unemployment in my county was at 42%. No one I knew had a job. My car had been repossessed. It was like time to pull the big boy pants up and make a decision. This was the right decision. There was really nothing to discuss. She didn't like it. She understood. So,
Oh, look at that. And it still worked out. And look where you are today, from a day one story like that. Thank you for sharing that story. Daryl, I like to take a moment in the podcast where we kind of stop talking tech for a moment. It's called my moment of levity, where I like to hit you with some rapid fire questions where there's no right or wrong answers, purely for humor and for fun. So if you'll humor me, I'm going to shoot you some questions, and whatever the first answer pops in your head, just blurt out the answer.
okay.
Okay. First one, is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
Okay. Continue with food. Cake or pie?
Pie.
Hot or cold pie?
Hot.
And what kind of pie?
Cherry pie.
Cherry pie, hot cherry pie. All right. Star Wars or Star Trek?
That one you can't get a straight answer.
Okay.
Early Star Trek, late Star Wars.
I like it. I like that. I like that. So a little bit of both, but depending on the time period. That's a good one. Who's your favorite character on the old Star Trek?
Spock.
Spock. Oh yeah, Leonard Nimoy, right? Fascinating.
Yep.
And then what's your favorite character in the new Star Wars?
Oh gosh. Uh, I think Anakin when he's young.
Young Anakin. Okay. And then this one is one of my second favorite question on the podcast is what was the last book you've read and what was your most favorite book of all time that you've read?
Okay, we'll start with the favorite book. So back when the movie Star Wars came out, I didn't go to the movie initially. It was probably out for a year before I went. But what I did do is I read the book.
Okay.
I loved that. That was one of my favorite books. I still remember it. It was actually after reading the book going to the movie, I'm like disappointed. I'm like
Okay,
the
because
book was
like they
better.
said, the book is always better than the movie, right?
The other this isn't the last book I read, but it's close to it. And this one I liked. This one I liked a lot. I have it right here in front of me.
Okay.
It's one of the ones I kept. It's called Escape from the Deep.
Ooh.
Escape from the Deep. So this is a World War II story of the SS Tang. The SS Tang was a U.S. submarine that during off the in Japanese waters, um, after they were fighting with the Japanese, they sunk one of the boats. One of their torpedoes went rogue and turned on them, and it come back and hit them, and they sank. They went down in like 180 feet of water. And this story covers that. It covers how 9 of them escaped through the forward escape trunk. Um, it was real interesting how a number of the people basically gave up. They didn't realize they weren't going to get out, and they just gave up, never even tried to get out. But I think 9 of them got out. After they got out, I think a couple. Nine got out. I can't remember how many died in the ascent, because you're coming up from 80 feet, you
Yeah.
get embolisms, and you can rupture your lungs, and there's all kinds of things that can go bad during that. But I think eight or nine of them got out alive, and then they were captured by the Japanese and ended up in China in a prisoner of war camp.
Mm.
So it goes through that, and then it goes through and it finishes up a discussion how they met back with their family. Because remember, it's a submarine; it never returned to port, so their family assumes everyone's dead because that's usually how submarine life is.
Hmm.
If it doesn't come back, that means it went down and everyone's lost. Rarely do people survive from that. But then it covers afterwards how they stayed in contact with each other until they're finally into their lives. But
Hmm.
really fascinating book, kind of thrilling around the whole concept of. And as somebody that served on a submarine, I always like books like this. Totally
Yeah.
fascinating.
Now we're going to jump back to the career discussion. Along your career, you mentioned you went to the Navy and got into electrical engineering, electronics, and everything. Which industry is better that you took those steps because here you are today serving industry in a big way. But along your career, I mean, now that you're level 99, you had started with that day one, and now as a level 99 expert in your field. Along the way, I'm sure there had to been tremendous mentors, colleagues, managers, bosses, people along the way that either impacted you in a positive way, or people that you admired and said, "Hey, I really admire this person. I'm learning so much from this person." So the goal of this question is: there any names of people that you want to pay homage to say, "Hey, these people had a tremendous impact on me and my career and in my life"?
That's interesting. There's been a number of people that have actually impacted my life and my career. Uh, a lot of them. One of the things you'll find out about me, one of my horrible sticking points is I'm terrible at remembering names. Terrible at remembering
Mm.
names. Um, but going back to the Navy, I think there was a senior chief, and I'm thinking his name was Grissom. Um, I like this guy. This guy would get in the trenches with the troops. He would work with us. He wasn't one like go do that and walk away. He would like help us sometimes. It was kind of amazing. The one thing he always said is always remember where you came from. No matter where you are in your career, remember where you came from, and always help bring people forward, help mentor
Good.
people, and bring them forward. So I've taken that to heart. I often work with people, um, and when it comes to learning new things or experiencing new things, I think it's important. No matter how good someone thinks they may be, somebody that you think knows nothing can always be learned from.
Yes.
I work with people all the time that may not have the years of experience I have, but that doesn't mean they don't have insight into certain areas or they've learned things that you don't know, and you can learn from them. And I think that's also important in a career, to focus on. Um, but again, when I speak at conferences or do things, I always a lot of times it's like I reach out to people at Rapid Seven. I'm like, hey, I'm working on this project. Do you want to help me? The goal of this project is we're going to do A, B, or C, and then we're going to present it somewhere at a conference. So I've done that with people I worked with, ex-coworkers. My Black Hat presentation was with a good friend, Carlotta Bidner. Um, she's out of the West Coast. She lives on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. But she was a co-worker at Rapid Seven. We worked on and off on some research projects. Absolutely one of the most brilliant women I know, and I learned a ton of stuff from her, as an example. But yet, I've worked with her, try to help mentor, and get her those opportunities and rest a chance to speak places, publish papers, things like that. And that's what I kind of like. Like I said, when it comes to mentors, I've had some really great mentors in the past. I had a mentor one time. This I like this story because it was kind of odd.
Yeah.
So a number of years ago, I was doing a research project when I worked in a Fortune 500 company, and the research project turned out to be server-side request forgeries. So at that point, there was no server-side request forgery. So I went to him and I said, look, I think I have something that's totally new. I said, at least there's no published documentation that I know on it. And I said, it looks like cross-site scripting, but it's server-side. And he inevitably argued with me, told me I was wrong. I should shut up. I should never use that term server-side request forgery. Um, I almost didn't, but then when we published the work and I did a presentation at ShmooCon in 2008, I called it server-side request forgery. And then we kind of moved on and forgot about it. And then it took a few more years and then it finally caught on. And other research that other, and I have to give a shout out to researchers when you're doing your research and you find tidbits of information in the past where things have been done and you document that into your current research, kind of building forward. That is brilliant. We all should do that. We need to make sure people came before us and they're always brilliant people, and often we're going to use some of their data, some of their ideas, and when we know about it, we need to make sure that we document that in our research and speak to it at our conferences and events. And a number of people did. They referenced my work from 2008, which I thought I was absolutely amazed that anyone even took the time to go out and find this obscure 20-minute presentation. So
I think it was Isaac Newton that said, "Is if I've seen further, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants." So I like the story you just told there about the people before us have left the knowledge and foundations that we build upon and build and keep building, and the folks after us will build on the things that we've done. So I love that. So you talked about mentoring, you talked about learning from all people. So let's say the person's watching right now and they reach this point of the podcast and they're listening and saying, this is intriguing. I want to learn more about Internet of Things. I want to learn more about how can I become the next Mr. Heiland? How can I come into, how can I find a way, the path? And so, what would be some websites, some resources? And if you don't know them right now, if you'll get them to me after this recording, I'll make sure they're in the description below. But are there some sites, websites, YouTube channels, folks that you say, hey, follow these folks, follow me? What are the resources for someone watching right now that says, I want to know more. I want to start my day one working in this part of the industry?
there's a lot of good information out there. There's a lot of good YouTube videos. I will go ahead and shoot you some information on some people that I know that do some YouTube video type stuff.
Hmm.
Search my name out there. You can find me. I write blogs. I release papers. There's a lot of talks, conferences I've spoken at where I've talked to things. I'll be speaking at Cyber Bay in Tampa next week. I'll be speaking at actually at Queen City Con in Cincinnati here November 7th, 8th weekend.
Okay, right around the corner.
That one I'm gonna talk about. So you want to hack IoT, where we're going to talk about from ground up, kind of that 50 minutes fire hose
Hmm.
on things to do on IoT. But I'll go ahead and get some stuff out there. There's plenty of
Appreciate
data. I use a lot of things. Every time I'm not every time, but a lot of times I'm working on something and I'm kind of stumped. I'm like, how do I do this or how do I do that? You can go out and search Google, search YouTube, use AI by all means. It's like Google on massive
it. Yeah.
steroids. And you can find the videos, the data, the context to expand from the ground up. Often, I always tell people if you want to get into this thing, let's first start by getting IoT devices and just opening them up.
Hmm.
Open this device up. Forget about using a logic analyzer, a probe. Let's look at this and figure out what it is. Learn the components. Go out and find the data sheets. Look through the data sheets, the memory chips, the CPUs, the flash,
Hmm.
all of the different things, and understand and look at how it's constructed, how there's connectors and solder joints. Get comfortable with looking at that, because once you get with that and you start understanding data sheets, the rest of it is just a matter of taking the tools and sticking them in the right place.
Hmm.
Um, And I think that's always important. And there's nothing wrong with just buying a bunch of devices and tearing them apart.
Tearing apart. I love it.
And I still do that. There's sometimes I'm like, this is
And
an
you have a
intriguing
very
device.
wonderful career getting to do just this kind of great fun stuff. Uh,
Exactly.
what's next? Like you already mentioned a couple conferences for the rest of this year in 2025, but what is 2026? Let's go out into 2026. What is that looking like for you right now?
So I'm closing up a couple projects that may expand out further because there's some intriguing things. I'm not going to give the details here, but there's some intriguing things I haven't done yet. So I've been working on cellular-based IoT technology. We published one paper, and we're having another paper come out Q4. And we also spoke at Black Hat this year on weaponizing cellular-based IoT. That was kind of cool. We are actually able to use the unused serial connection on a cellular module that has USB running for its communication, unused serial to actually send AT commands and created things like SOCKS 5 proxy so we can route a laptop through the device to
Mm,
the internet or to its back-end network based on how it's set up to connect in. So things like that. So there's some other areas in that realm that I want to look at. I'm also looking at more industrial type devices. I have a big device setting right here that the fuzzer's turned off right now, but it's fuzzing some protocols on this device right now. So I do have some vulnerability CVE driven type research that I'm poking around with right now. And I don't know.
okay.
I'll,
Wide open still.
things can change quickly.
Mhm.
I usually have multiple projects running. Some of the projects I run over in the evenings and weekends and stuff like that instead of during work hours also. It gives me a chance to stagger a number of different projects. So if I get bored, I can kind of move between them.
Mhm.
It helps quite a bit. So I'm looking at some ideas. I mean, we've started a number of ideas and then go, nah, this ain't gonna work. We're gonna move on. So I have like tons of gear sitting around here on all kinds of things you can imagine. That we were poking around with some ideas and then decided, no, let's kind of move in a different direction. But yet, a lot of times projects are driven by just observation. So when I can observe something in an environment or in my environment um, that intrigues me, then I want to expand on it. And
Mhm.
that often is what triggers a lot of the research projects.
So curiosity and imagination. I love it.
Right.
So, Daryl, a lot of us, you're super busy, multiple projects, working nights and weekends, speaking at events and conferences, publishing CVs, doing all this great work in industry. But a lot of us professionals, we do try to carve out time for volunteer work, causes, charities, and nonprofit organizations that are doing good in the world. Whether we give of our time, money, or our energy, is there any kind of causes? And the goal of this question is for you to shine a light on any organizations, nonprofits, volunteers, organizations, or charities that are doing great work in the world.
Oh, man, there's a lot of them. I would, there's a, if you're interested in security, there's often a lot of small groups, nonprofits that probably exist in your area that you don't know about. We have several in this area here. We have for example, Ohio Information Security Forum, which is in this area, which is a group I started 20 years ago as a nonprofit. I haven't ran it in 15 years, but it's still going on as an example. And I would say engage with those, help them. Often, most of those small organizations in your area are driven by people like us to come in and either present, do talks, which is one of the things I like to do. I try to volunteer myself to speak at events or groups like this and help them kind of move forward and learn and things like that. But they can also use financial aid in a lot of cases to cover things like rooms, projectors, or bringing in a speaker or things like that. So I challenge everyone to kind of go out and try to find local groups or organizations that do that. Um, on a non-technical aspect, there's a number of religious organizations. that help people that are in need. You can have some in your local. There's some large scale ones. Um, Billy Graham's son, I can't even remember the name of it, is one of them. And they go into these areas that, same way with CBN or 700 Club, as an example, has an organization that go in and they bring food and relief into things like the disasters that hit North Carolina when the hurricane, as an example.
Hmm.
They moved into that area and supplied a lot of resources into those areas. These groups, almost all these two groups I mentioned, almost all of their money it goes to that. It isn't used for massive overhead, so it's a large percentage of the money. And I like groups like that.
Hmm.
And I'm a
Yep.
fan of faith-based groups when they use the money wisely. And both of
Hmm.
those groups, from what I've seen, do use the money wisely. So I always encourage supporting that, or even supporting groups in your local area, and also food banks and
Food
things
banks
like
as well.
that is also a big one. If you don't want to go to a larger group and you want to be more impactful in your area, consider the food banks. They add a lot of value and help many in your area.
Wow. Well said, Daryl. I know we could talk for forever because you have such a great long career and so much. I'm sure you got stories upon stories to tell, but I do want to be respectful of your time. But with that being said, I would love to have you back maybe sometime in 2026, and we maybe talk about the secret things you're working on now that might be public then. I would love to have you back on, Daryl. For all my guests, I like to give them the final word, and so whatever you want to talk about, it could be about security research, IoT, what it could be whatever you want to talk about. The floor is yours, sir.
Oh wow. Well, yeah, that's a hard one. I wasn't expecting that, but let's I'm going to throw something in here. It's totally off the wall. Um, I usually don't usually share some of this information, but we all are in tech. We're all busy. We're always going crazy. We need to have hobbies. Need to have hobbies, things that entertain you, are fascinating. And as like with the old technology type stuff, I do some other stuff. I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen and show something. This is going to be, let me see. So
Wow.
So what you're looking at is actually a recreation of a late 19th century
Drugstore? Like a
drugstore.
apothecary?
Yes, apothecary. So this is one of the things I do, and it's kind of a quiet space. These walls are thick and insulated in this building,
Yes.
um, and it has all kinds of signs.
Look at
The
this,
building's
the till there. Wow, with the push.
Yeah, the building's full, like I'm out
Uh-huh.
of space, so it's on my radar screen to put up a new building. But I always thought this was cool, and it's a nice quiet space. So I come in here every morning.
Hmm.
I go get coffee, come here every morning, sit down quiet.
Wow.
It's a place where I can read a
The
Bible,
attention to
and
detail is just phenomenal. I kudos for just wow. And how did you amass this collection over how long did it take you to get all of these pieces and relics?
this probably took 30 plus years.
I believe it. I would believe it. It's
Yeah, I've been
very
collect
well put together.
I've been collecting stuff like this for over 40 years, but not to any scale. It a lot of this kind of amassed over the last 20 years. Before that, the collection was reasonable in size. Let's put it that way. Uh, and then over time, it progressively got out of hand. So almost everything in here is period.
Hmm.
Everything in here ranges probably from the 1870s um, up to about 1920, with the vast majority of it being before 1901 or 1910. So more
It
earlier
begs
stuff.
it begs two questions, and I'd hate to butt in, but I have to ask since you showed such an amazing room here. What is the most valuable thing from a price, value perspective? But what is your most favorite item in this room?
Yeah, that's kind of the hard thing. Let me see if I even have pictures of it. Uh, see, this diamond die cabinets, I like those. I think those are absolutely fascinating items. the probably the I won't say how much is worth. The probably the most expensive item is the actual apothecary cabinet.
I
So
was
you
gonna
can
say
see that.
that's impressive.
So this apothecary cabinet, you're not seeing it all. I couldn't
Yeah.
get it all in there. So this thing, apothecary cabinet is 20 feet long and 9 feet tall. This part back here is the actual center of the cabinet.
Oh.
The bottom was in two 10-foot sections by
Uh-huh.
design, and I just set it up in an L shape to fit in the room. The other one is the center section I put up, and the two side sections that match this are in storage right now because I don't have room to put them in there. Um, and that thing weighs a ton.
Hmm.
Oh gosh, it nearly crippled like three or four of us trying to get it in there. And that was without the drawers in it. We had pulled all the drawers out. So the drawers, when I got this, the labels, I don't know if I showed on these, the labels are drug labels on these
Hmm.
drawers. Um, and I ended up acquiring, when I bought it, it had like 40 or 50 of these, maybe 50, maybe 60, somewhere around there. And I spent the next 3 years replacing all the ones that weren't drug labels with drug labels that I hunted down. There's
Hmm.
144 drawers on this thing. So I had to hunt down about 80 or 90 drug labels for this. Now, of course, I got a lot of duplicates in there. So the
Yeah.
goal is to eventually sort through all the duplicates and start hunting down ones to replace those.
Wow, what a joy to see something like this. And I love it when someone like takes their hobby to like level 99 with just attention to detail, meticulousness. Like you said, you've had to have, patience and tenacity and not giving up on getting it to where you want it to be as close to original as possible. Like you said, you're still working on the knobs. Wow. I'm blown away. Blown away, Daryl.
It's fun. It's entertainment. That's how I look at it. It's
Mhm.
is like you look at stuff like this and go, "Oh, it's your life." I'm like, "Nah, this is not my life. This
No.
is this is just entertainment. Just like you would like watch a movie or go to
Hmm.
a ball
Or
game.
people that
This
collect
is
DVDs or collect
Mhm.
baseball cards or anything that you collect, but it's something that I could tell that when you're in the space, when you say you love to be in a space, it makes your soul smile. That's the way I vision this. Like your soul smiles when you're in this space.
Yeah, I actually hardly own anything that's new. I think this our sofas are and refrigerators and TV are the only thing new in the house.
Hmm.
Everything we own is old.
Wow.
I've always been intrigued by old things. So the whole house is full of it. All the bedroom sets are 1870s, 1880s. The house was built around 1900.
Mhm.
Um, so it's I don't know. It's just it's kind of your DNA. Um,
Yes. Thank you for sharing this, Daryl. And again, I'm sorry to ask the questions and interrupt your train of thoughts because I know you was going with the idea of that, our life isn't always just about work. We got to fill it with things that bring us joy. And I love that you shared this with us. So if you wanted to continue, the floor is still yours, sir.
I think that pretty much done.
Okay.
Probably need to get back and get some more hacking going on some IoT devices around here,
All right.
and get that stuff done. But anyone is interested, I'm available on LinkedIn, and available on Rapid Seven's blog site. You can find my stuff there. Don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have questions on pretty much any subject on security or IoT. I always welcome that, and I'm glad to help anyone out where I can.
All right. Well, Daryl, it's been a pleasure having you on the Top Cyber Pro podcast. Thank you for so much for being a guest.
Well, thank you. Take care.